Welcome to Crossing Paths at Sandals Church Redlands, a space where real life meets real stories. Together we'll journey through the incredible lives of our church community, exploring the real life stories that intertwine our connections and deepen our relationships. Thanks for tuning in. Let's dive in.
All right. We are here for the first episode of Crossing Paths. I'm going to explain what that title means. Crossing Paths. We all cross here at the church because of the cross of Calvary, and we get to interact with people who are fascinating and interesting, and it brings together people that would not otherwise be connected. And so this is an opportunity for us to have a chance to share stories. And we are a campus that is focused on creating a culture of invitation, connection, and belonging. We want to be inviting people into the church here at Sandals Church Redlands. We want to make sure that people are connected. And then in addition to that, this needs to be a place where people feel like they belong. And man, I read somewhere that home is where they hang your picture, so we want Sandals Church Redlands to be a place where we're able to hang people's pictures in a variety of different ways, whether they're a volunteer or they're serving or their family is ministered to here. And so, hey, we're going to use this as an opportunity to do that as we have different episodes and we interview a variety of different people at our campus. But we're starting off with 3 of the staff, besides myself, here at Sandals Church Redlands. So Austin Sally, who is our youth ministry lead, Kelwin Wild, who is our associate pastor and also campus operations lead, and Ben Jarrow, who is our worship lead and production lead as well. So he's got a combined role. And in the next 20 or so minutes, you're going to hear a little bit about their stories. So I'm going to just spark a conversation with them. And I'm going to start with Austin, because Austin, you have a very intriguing, interesting story, because at some point in time in your life when you're fairly young, you moved with your family from Riverside to Tanzania, Africa. So just tell us how that happened, what spurred your family to make a big decision like that.
Yeah, we moved over there and I was like, why does that sound so crackly? Does it sound crackly for you guys?
No, you just have to get closer up to the mic.
Cool. Yeah, so we moved over to Tanzania when I was 4 or 5 years old, and I don't know, my dad was a physical therapist. He was running a clinic out here in Riverside, and all of a sudden, just one day, from a 4-year-old's perspective, they were like, we're leaving, actually. We're going to go over, and we're going to be in Tanzania and Africa, and as a 4-year-old, I was like, there was one image that came to my head when I heard Africa, and it was just some woman with a full bajaj on and standing in the wilderness in the desert just with wind blowing, and I was like, we're going to nowhere. And my brothers were all freaking out. My oldest brother was already 14 at the time.
You said you were how old?
I was 4 or 5 when we moved out there. Yeah.
Wow.
I was I think I was 5 because I was about to turn 6. Because I remember I had my first birthday after a couple months over there, and we were trying to figure out what to do for presents because we still couldn't buy it. We didn't know how to do anything at all. And so I ended up with thin little rubber soccer ball as my first gift. And
wow.
But yeah, we were over there for almost 10 years, and that was my childhood, my home, and yeah, I loved it over there.
And you and I got a chance to go on a short-term trip recently this summer. That's how I got connected with you, and that's how I invited you to even think about and considering being on staff here as our youth lead, and you graciously accepted that. But we wouldn't have had that connection had it not been for Tanzania. And so we went on this amazing trip. We had a team of people that went to minister in Kigoma and Mkuyu, and it was just wow, so incredible. But it was fun to watch you in your element, because he actually helped us navigate conversations, because you speak in Swahili, and so it was really cool to see you in action. So tell us some insights, things that you learned when you actually lived there. You went to boarding school. Mm-hmm. So that would have been hard, as your parents were having to send you off to a boarding school in a new place, and you're growing up in a foreign land, totally different than what you had been used to up to that point. Yeah.
Well, for me, used to from my point was because I was only 4.
Yeah.
So when I was actually able to start cognitively remember like actually having memories, it was in Tanzania.
Yeah.
So that's always felt like home. But yeah, boarding school was awesome because when we first moved out there, we realized there's no real schools in the area that we were in. There was one tiny school called Tonga International School, and it was kind of in English, kind of not in English, and the teachers didn't really teach at all. We just played all day. So I had the most fun second grade year of my life. Yeah. But my parents weren't too stoked about that. So we ended up, they were like, you can't do that. So they immediately sent my oldest brother over to boarding school. They're like, you need a real like education. Yeah. And then they homeschooled the rest of us. And so we just slowly start going to boarding school. And I remember I was just itching to go to boarding school. I was like, let me out of here. Like, let me go with my brothers. Cause it was up in Kenya. It wasn't actually in Tanzania. Wow. It was about 13 hours away by car. But I just remember every time I'd see people up at boarding school, it's like so much fun, and they were just playing. And so I was begging to go to boarding school for years and years. And finally in the 5th grade, they let me go up to boarding school. Wow. And got to, it was great. You just live with your friends and super, super independent. It was really fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
There's so much to that story that we want to unpack at some point in time. I want to get to the other guys as well. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about youth right now. Yeah. That you're developing a team alongside you. You had 160 youth.
Plus, we lost count.
On the first night that we launched youth, we're staying up around 100 kids a week. It's been amazing. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, youth has been super, super spectacular. I mean, I was not expecting to have that kind of turnout the first night. So it's been really cool just to see how God's been constantly just providing kids and leaders to be able to help lead the kids. I really think that the next generation is the most important thing that we can be focusing on as a church. Yep. And so just getting to watch how God's been providing over and over and over again for these Wednesday nights has been super, super cool. Even just being able to have Ben just doing live worship.
Yeah, we have amazing worship at youth, which not every campus gets a chance to have, but we have amazing worship every single week. It's so
great, yeah.
It's great. And on top of everything else, if that wasn't good enough, we just, on Giving Tuesday, the generosity of Sandals Church Redlands just went over the top, and we had people give $105,000 toward a renovation of a section of a building we haven't had access to up until this point because of the fact that we've had a renter in that section, and they're moving out January 1st. And so it gives us access to that part of the building. And part of this Giving Tuesday, a major part, is to develop and build out a youth center that won't be just available for the use of our kids, students here, but in addition to that, potentially down the road, we would have it available as a resource for the community and youth in the community. And so, man, it's just going to be a fascinating year of seeing that being developed and a blessing to the youth. And so it's exciting.
Yeah, I'm so stoked at even just the opportunity to be able to open that up to kids that aren't even attending on Sundays or Wednesdays, because when they get to be in a place where they're loved and they're safe and they get to have fun, they want to know why that they're allowed to do that here and not somewhere else. And so having that opportunity to be able to minister to a whole family because we're providing a place for their children to be safe and have fun and just get the love of Jesus is going to be so cool.
So great. Yeah, so amazing thankful. And exciting for us as a campus and for our youth and for our families. I'm going to shift over from Austin to Kelwin. Again, Kelwin, you are our associate pastor, my right-hand guy, and also our campus operations lead. You, in addition to that, have been the spearhead for construction projects across the board over 14 other campuses. And so you've had to make this massive shift and adjustment, which is a lot. You're going to be helping us also with this build out, which is cool to have an in-house guy that really knows how.
I'm supposed to be doing that?
We're hoping, praying that you'll help with that. But you also have some very deep roots in Redlands. You worked for 15 plus years on the Redlands Fire Department, and you have a lot of connections as a result of that. So can you just share a little bit about your history here in Redlands?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that Sandals Church would actually hire me for construction because all I knew was ripping things apart. That's what we got to do as firemen. My career in Redlands started in 2004 with the Redlands Fire Department, and left at the beginning of 2019. Served as a firefighter paramedic for half of my career, and then the other half I was an engineer, and maintained my paramedic license during that time. Had a lot of fun driving a fire engine. I mean, it's the stuff that kids play toys with when they're young. And then for me to be able to do that as an adult, brought me a lot of joy. I really took a lot of pride in caring for people well, not just physically with, whatever the worst day of their life was, but also emotionally. Occasionally I got to care for them spiritually as well, which was really neat. I really considered the last 5 years of my career an extension of ministry, because my ministry trajectory was changing in my later years. In my early years, it was definitely pride, ego driven. I'm a fireman, all the things that come with that. But as I matured mentally, emotionally, spiritually, God had other plans for me, and it was neat to see what he was doing in my life the last several years of my career, and how it was shaping me and equipping me to enter into ministry.
That's awesome.
I didn't know what that timing was going to be. I left at 40, which is, well, now it's 17 years earlier than when most guys would retire. I was eligible to go at 50, but I left at 40, and Sandals graciously took me on and entered into basically our facilities role, which oversaw construction projects, improvements, repairs, and
all of this project at Redlands.
Yep. I was approached in April and said, "Hey, we're going to launch a campus in Redlands." I'm like, "Okay, that's great." I knew what I needed to do to get that lined up. And then at the end of that conversation, it was, "Oh, and we'd like you to be the associate pastor at that campus as well." And I was like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah. That's quite a juggling act.
And not only that, but the fact that God would have this redemptive story that would start me in EMS in Redlands, leave this community to go into ministry and work for Sandals Church all over the place, and then to be invited back to Redlands to care for people on a whole new level. I just see God's hand orchestrating that all the way through, but never in a million years would I have imagined that I'd land in a role like this.
And it's so cool because your connections from the 15 years in the fire department are just an amazing connection still for us. You recently baptized somebody that you worked with, a firefighter. And so it's just a sweet moment for he and you and his family as they came. And then also there was a fundraiser that they do every year at the bowling alley, and like just kind of being a part of that, Sandals Church Redlands, and connecting with a lot of those guys. And you could just see Kelwin was in his element, man, because everybody knows Kelwin and everybody's friends of Kelwin. I mean, if you know Kelwin, you're a friend of Kelwin. And so it was just kind of fun to watch you in that element.
Yeah, it was a trip down memory lane when we went to the benevolent bowl that the Redlands firefighters put on. Got to see police officers from town, firefighters from all throughout the Inland Empire, local politicians that not only for the city of Redlands, but state of California, the county, and there's a congressman that lives here in town who I had gotten to know while he was the mayor here. And to think that who I was and what I was trying to do as a fireman and the role that I had there and the relationships that I established, I had a gap of about 5 years before I came back to the community, and to be able to see them again and shake hands with them, it makes me feel good about the work that I did in public safety, but it makes me really excited about the work that's ahead of me in ministry.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. And as associate pastor now, I mean, developing into that and the just opportunities that are before you as a result of that, I'm excited.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Brian.
Yeah. Ben, you're next. Ben, you are our production and worship lead, so you've got a combined role. But I want to hear part of your story with regard to you grew up in Bend, Oregon, and also how like music came about, because it came in later in your life, right? I mean, you're still young, but I mean, you didn't start in as a young kid thinking or imagining that you were going to be a worship lead. But here you are. So tell us a little bit about all of that.
Yeah. My music journey started around freshman year of college. Although looking back, if you go to my dad's YouTube page, you can actually find videos from like 2005. There's one of me singing Awesome God, Michael W. Smith version, literally playing a tennis racket as if it's a guitar. So even though
I gotta see that. You gotta pull that out.
I'll pull that out. But from a young age, like looking back, there was definitely that love for music. But my family was sports. My grandpa worked for the Seattle Mariners for 15 years. Like sports was my childhood and life growing up. I played baseball through high school, and that was what I kind of prided myself on, was being an athlete and continued to grow as a baseball player. And so my friends were sports. That was a lot of what my identity was. I got a guitar in my freshman year of high school and taught myself how to play, but I just played in my room and didn't really think anything of it. And it wasn't until my freshman year at Cal Baptist that I was peer pressured into singing a little campfire style worship that the hall did that I was living in, and got peer pressured into doing it. And really for like 2 weeks was like, no. And finally was like, I'll do it if someone sings with me. And that just started a spark of being like, it's really not that scary. And it really just started a spark of falling in love with music. And I was an architect major at the time. That's what I declared as going to CBU. And it wasn't until that winter break when I went home and started to get involved with the worship team at my home church, not really singing, just kind of playing the guitar, but really fell in love with being on the platform and ministering to people through a way that I got ministered to. Like growing up, the way I learned and kind of connected with God the most was through worship music. And so I felt this love of like, okay, like I have this gift. This is how I connected to music. I would love to have other people connect to God through music, because music really connects with people the most. A lot of times people show up on Sundays and they may not remember a phrase in the message, but they'll remember a lyric. Yeah. Lyrics stick with people and they remember lyrics, and that can be so important. And so it just started that love, and eventually by sophomore year I declared switched from from architecture to music, and became a music major, got a music degree at CBU, and senior year got involved with serving at Sandals Church, and then in March got approached by Ron, the executive pastor, and he came to me and was like, we have a position and we'd love for you to apply for it. And here I am now at Redlands.
And initially you were going to Santa Rosa, and we got you from there. So you kind of had you were going to move up north, and we're glad you didn't, because now we have you here at Redlands. Which is super cool. Yeah. What a blessing it is for our campus. Recently, you posted a picture of you at a Phil Wickham concert, right? And it was an interesting perspective because it was from the stage. So you actually were a part of the backup vocals, right, for Phil Wickham, and you've done that in the past. And it's kind of an interesting relationship with Phil Wickham. And so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. At CBU in the music program, you've got different departments. There's music ed, there's worship arts, which is what I was, and then there's the commercial program. And each program has a director, and the director for the commercial program, his name's Tom Brooks. If any of you know Integrity Music, they were started in the 80s. They were the first ever Christian record label. They were known for bringing on Hillsong, and they really started worship choirs and kind of that contemporary worship. They were a huge part in the worship we have today. He was the co-founder of Integrity Music, and he and so he's on staff now at CBU, but he's friends with Phil, so he has that connection. And so Phil reaches out to him when he wants some help or something with
swell the frog.
There we go. With
you don't never do that on stage. That's pretty impressive.
Usually doesn't happen. I'll get it cleared before I start singing. But Phil went on Christmas tour. Did his first Christmas tour. He did some earlier in his career, but Phil did a Christmas tour in 2022. It was just 4 nights. It was Sacramento, Vegas, Anaheim, and San Diego. And he reached out to Tom and said he wanted a choir for the tour. And so Tom reached out to some of us at CBU, and I got the chance we actually traveled with Phil to all 4 locations. It was church in Sacramento, church in Vegas, then the Honda Center, which was a treat to be on stage in front of 17,000+ people with Phil Wickham, Brandon Lake, and new young artist Dan Wilson. But after that tour, Phil loved it, and it was his first time he really did that. Kind of had a choir with him on stage, and he loved it. So the following year, last year, 2023, he invited us back to do the same thing, and then this year he invited us back to do it again. and we got to sing with him at his home church in. It's not the church he's at now, but it's a church. It's his dad's church called Maranatha Chapel in Encinitas, and that's where he grew up. But it was the stage he first led worship on when he was 13.
Wow.
So I'm sure that was sweet for him. It's sweet for him every time he gets to do concerts there. But it was a treat to be able to sing background vocals with him for his Christmas nights. He just loves the idea of having so many voices. One of his things is to have the voices be the loudest sound in the room, because that's really what it's about, is voices singing to God. And so he loves the idea of having just so many voices on stage with him. And we've been able to have that opportunity to do that.
That's awesome. It's so amazing. The Wickham family are all very gifted. Like we've had Evan Wickham. He's also, is an amazing vocalist. And
Evan's a worship pastor at a church. I think he just started his own church in downtown San Diego. His dad's a pastor. And I don't know exactly what his mom does. I'm sure there's something there.
It's a very musical family.
Yep. Yeah. Both his parents, I thought this was cool, but both his parents were actually, if any of you have, seen the Jesus Revolution movie, or, the Jesus movement that happened in the 60s, his parents were both saved. They were both hippies that got saved and baptized. At Pirates Cove back in the early 70s. So
that's cool. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. You're very gifted worship leader. You have an amazing voice. I feel like it's a blessing, a huge blessing for us here at Sandals Church Redlands. If you've heard, if you've heard Ben sing and lead, it's powerful and great. And so we just feel like it's just such a special thing to have you at our campus. Glad you didn't end up in Santa Rosa. And so this is our first episode of what will be many episodes of Crossing Paths. It's a chance for everybody just to listen in to conversations. I get a chance to meet with a lot of people, and I get to know them. It's part of my job. I literally get paid to do that. And the one thing that I really want more than anything else is to be able to share some of these amazing stories of the people that I cross paths with, and it results because of what Jesus has done in my life and what Jesus has done in the lives of others. So we literally cross paths at the cross of Calvary. And I look forward to many more episodes of interviewing, talking with people in this congregation, hearing their stories, because it's this fabric that God pulls together. It's called the church. It's the bride of Christ. It's amazing, fantastic. It's a story you don't want to miss. And so this is one way that we get a chance to share that, and we look forward to that. So thank you for hanging in there with us and listening in. And we look forward to talking with you and sharing more stories down the road.